And she's just freed from the conflict of this entire story. And so she's like, I don't care that you murdered her. I'll stay with you because we love each other and I'll support you and we'll get through this. Which, reality is like, do you really want to be married to someone who's capable of murdering his wife? Okay, we'll go with that. Maybe in a few years you'll realize that that probably wasn't the best decision. Welcome to the club. This is Cracking the Spine, a book club that actually talks about books. Novel, I know. So this is part 2 of Rebecca, and I was editing part 1, and I was remembering how concerned I was. I just felt like the whole first half of the book was red flags, red flags. This is not a good relationship. Why are you entering this relationship? Like, you don't even know this man. He's never even said his wife's name until after the honeymoon. There's definitely huge baggage going on that nobody's talking about. He obviously hasn't gotten over the grief because he can't talk about it, and everyone in the house is weird about it too, and they're all just trying to gloss over it, mostly because he can't talk about it. It's just weird. And it just got weirder. So, after we left off last time, like the next big thing after Mrs. Danvers is like, ooh, let me show you this perfectly preserved room of Rebecca, where I haven't cleaned anything in her nightgown. So, the next thing I remember is that she goes to see her husband's mother, who's very old, who kind of can't see and is kind of losing it. And so she goes with his sister, and the sister's just like, hey, this is, man, what's his name? Max de Winter. This is Max's new wife. And they just got back from their honeymoon and wanted to introduce to her. And she's like, oh, that's so lovely. And they have a nice conversation. And then she has like a fit of dementia. I want to say amnesia. That's not right. I think it's dementia. She's like, you're not Rebecca. You're not my son's wife. Where's Rebecca? Who's taken Rebecca? And they like have to leave because she has a big fit. And the nurse takes her away. And it's just really awkward. And the sister took it strangely very hard. Just apologizing a lot, which she doesn't usually do. And so the dark cloud of Rebecca grows even larger. And then they have to entertain their friends, even though, like, they don't want to. She doesn't want to. Max doesn't want to. But because we're proper and that's what we used to do, was we used to entertain our quote-unquote friends, they invite people over for like a luncheon or something. And of course these people are like, oh, the big costume party you throw every year, you're going to do that again? We'd really like you to do that because it's a really big event around here. And push, 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 push until they give in. They really don't want to do it, but it's like, whatever, we'll do it and get it over with. Play our part in society. So they're making all the preparations. And main character decides, I'm gonna get into this. Like, we're framing it as a celebration. Like, my new wife, come celebrate with us. So, I'm gonna pick out a really cool costume and play the part and enjoy it. So she is having lots of fun, and her maid's really excited, and like even Mrs. Danvers gets in on it. She's like, "Oh, you should pick someone from the portrait gallery of, all the De Winter ancestry. You should pick something there because it's recognizable and, you're a member of the family now, etc." So she picks this one portrait and she gets like a custom dress and she gets super excited and her maid is equally as excited, but she won't tell her husband or their friends what she's going to dress up as. And they're like, okay, we're anxiously anticipating. And of course, Max is like, I don't want to dress up as anything. I'm just going to wear a nice suit. So the day of the party comes, and she gets her get up on, and she chooses to be, I think her name is Catherine de Winter. Doesn't matter, I don't know. But she chooses one of these people. She gets all dressed up, and she's so excited, so pumped. It's the perfect outfit, and the maid's so excited too. And she walks down the stairs and has one of the servants do a fake little introducing Lady Catherine de Winter. And she walks down the stairs, and Max and his sister and some friend, just like stare at her, and they are not impressed. Max is disgusted. Everyone else is shocked. She's like, this is not the reaction I was expecting. And then Max gets super angry, and he's like, what kind of joke are you trying to pull? And just like rips into her. And finally, just as the reader, I was like, someone just tell her what she did wrong. Stop just punishing her and let her have a chance to fix it. Anyways, so apparently that's what Rebecca had dressed up as at the last costume party. And she ends up looking just like Rebecca, and so they're shocked because that's how Rebecca used to look. And so, of course, she's horrified because that is not something she wanted to play into. She's the opposite, really trying to be her own person. And so she runs back to her room, and on the way, Mrs. Danvers is standing in the hall with this giant grin on her face. And she realizes that Mrs. Danvers orchestrated the whole thing. She thought she was being helpful and kind and accepting her, but she was just trying to. She's like, pretty sure she says, I didn't want him to forget her. Cast her aside and replace her with you, kind of thing. And so she tricked her into bringing Rebecca back. So of course, she's just devastated, and her maid is completely devastated, which I was like, you keep that girl. She's actually on your side and helpful and cares about you. Or at least in this situation. Which is more than most of the other people. Then the sister comes up, let me help you like pick out something else, and you can just come down in a nice dress and kind of match Max because he's not dressed up. She's like, I don't want to come down. I don't want to do it. I'm done. Which is like, if Max hadn't just exploded at her and it just explained, or like walked away so that Beatrice could explain, maybe I could recover quicker. But no. Another red flag. So Beatrice goes down and makes her excuses. And eventually she comes down to the party, and it was very familiar to me, but just like puts on this face, and it's just, how lovely. How are you doing? What a wonderful thing you said. And just does that for the entire night. And, there's no happiness, there's no joy. It's just, I am a zombie. And Max doesn't talk to her the whole night. And they go their separate ways. And she wakes up in the morning, and he has never come to bed. And he's left the house. Nobody knows where he is. And she's just really upset. And then they hear some sort of distress call coming from the bay. And they're like, oh my goodness, what is that? And it turns out that some sort of boat has crashed on the reef. And so like the whole drama of the night before just kind of disappears because we're in emergency mode. Max goes down and he's like, prepare food because all the people on the boat, we're going to house them here while we figure out how to save the boat and make sure everybody's okay. So they're taking care of all that. There's lots of drama, and Max really steps up, which is nice because he's kind of been a lump for a while. And they have, like, the whole town comes and is watching everything. They bring in a diver to come down and see the damage on the underside of the ship to see if it's salvageable or not. So the diver goes down, and she's like, Max, come back to the house. Let's rest, and we've done a lot today. So they're at home, and they're just trying to calm down and make sure everyone's eaten. And then whatever the country police chief dude is, comes and talks to the pair of them and says, the diver went down, and they found Rebecca's boat on the bottom of the bay. It looks like there's a body inside. I just wanted to let you know before it breaks out and it's in the newspapers and people are asking weird questions. And I'll let you know that if we found what we think is her body, and we're going to bring the boat up and investigate and whatever. And they're like, okay. And the police guy leaves, and Max turns around and says, it's only a matter of time before they find out that I killed her. What? Like, I knew there was red flags, but I thought it because he was a bum and he couldn't get over his wife who he loved so much, but he got into another rebound relationship. But really, he killed her, and that's what's been making him not want to talk about it and be all, I don't want Rebecca in my life anymore, is because he killed her and he feels guilty. Oh, that's not what I expected, but okay. everything makes sense now. But then the main character is like, you didn't love your wife? Hallelujah! And she's just so relieved that he didn't actually love his wife, and she's not this big presence and thing that she has to measure up to, that he actually loves her. And she's just freed from the conflict of this entire story. And so she's like, I don't care that you murdered her. I'll stay with you because we love each other and I'll support you and we'll get through this. Which, reality is like, do you really want to be married to someone who's capable of murdering his wife? But okay, we'll go with that. Maybe in a few years you'll realize that probably wasn't the best decision. But I could see the relief from being out from under Rebecca's shadow. It's probably clouding your judgment. So they agree to do their best to get out of it, although he's sure that he's going to get caught. So they raise the boat, determine that it is her body because it had like her jewelry on the fingers and such. And they're like, okay, there's going to be an inquest just to confirm what happened. And then we finally get the story out of Max that Rebecca was just this awful, awful person. She pretty much tricked him into marrying her, but she was like sleeping around, doing drugs. They didn't get very like specific, but all the bad things that you don't want your wife of that time doing, she was doing them. And she was just like this free spirit, but malicious and manipulative. So she was like sleeping with her cousin, which was the weird guy that showed up in the window right before we had the look at the perfectly preserved room. And it was just bad. And I couldn't divorce her because then the scandal. I didn't quite get that. But he really loves this house, the manor they're in, Mandalay. And he really wants to preserve its honor because it's his family. And so she's like, we could get divorced and I'll ruin you, essentially, because I have no qualms and no morals and no ethics. So he stays married to her, but like tries to be separate from her as much as possible. But she's so charismatic and puts on balls and invites people over that he kind of just has to play this pretend game. And then the night that he killed her, she had this little boathouse that she would go down to, and he was sure that she would go down and be sleeping with whoever. So he went down with a shotgun because he was just going to be like, get out to whoever it was. But it was just her. But she said, guess what? I'm pregnant. And you could probably guess it's not yours. But you can't tell anybody because of the dishonor. And so how does it make you feel to know that my child, who is not your child, who is my child, and you know how much you love me, is going to inherit your beautiful estate and run it into the ground? And so just after years of being married to this woman and sacrificing everything, he just lost it and shot her. And then he put her body in the boat and sunk it, essentially. So it makes you a little bit sympathetic to why he did it. And the police come back and they're like, we'd probably write this off as it was originally an accidental death. But when they got the boat up, they found that all of these like taps were open, which I didn't quite understand, but essentially it let water in where usually when you were out on the ocean you would close those. It was just very intentional. And so they're like, okay, well, we're gonna rule this as a suicide because she must have done this and then killed herself. But then the weird cousin shows up again and he's like, I'm gonna get you, Max. So I received a letter that day that said she was gonna come to me and tell me some big news, and she wouldn't have done that if she was just gonna commit suicide earlier that day. So this isn't a suicide. There's no way. And you're probably thinking, what about the gunshot wound? He shot her in such a way that it shot her jaw off or something. So that just kind of got lost to the sea. So he starts this big suspicion thing. And then they're like, was she going to come see you? Like, you know who would know? Mrs. Danvers. And you're like, oh no, Mrs. Danvers is not going to protect Max at all. As soon as she figures out that he might have killed her, she'd go crazy and she'd go kill him. So she walks in and she's like, I don't know. She kept a diary. We could look in her diary in my perfectly preserved room that I'm not going to mention right now. So she goes and gets the diary, and it says there's many entries for visiting a certain doctor. in town. And so they call the doctor. And someone answers, and he's like, "The doctor's not here right now." So like, "What kind of doctor are you?" "Oh, he's a woman's doctor." And so now you can see that Miss Danvers is putting it together. Like, oh no. Oh no. When is the bomb going to go off? So the police, well, the cousin guy is just like, he's blatantly saying it. Max killed her, and I'm going to prove why. Like, I'm not going to give up. And so the police guy's like, I got to take this seriously. How about we all go into town tomorrow, find this doctor, ask him what happened? And that should give us more evidence. But let's all get a good night's rest. We'll go in the morning. So Max is like, they're all going to find out. The doctor's going to say that she was pregnant and they're going to know it was me. And so they kind of have like their last night together because they're pretty sure it's all going to end tomorrow. And they all get up and they go to see this doctor. And the doctor is like, I don't remember this lady. And it turns out that she gave a fake name to the doctor. She told him she was Mrs. Danvers, which like speaks to their weird relationship. Miss Danvers does not go on this trip. It is all the men that go and the main character. So the doctor eventually remembers that she gave the name Mrs. Danvers. And cousin or somebody is like, was she pregnant? And the doctor says, no, she was definitely not pregnant. And Max is just like, okay. You know, he's keeping it cool. They're actually like, the De Winter couple is keeping it pretty cool in front of everyone, which I'm pretty impressed by. But you can tell that inside they're just going, what? What's happening? Where is this going? So the doctor finally reveals that Rebecca actually had some terminal illness that she'd already been suffering a lot of pain from, and it was just going to get worse, and there wasn't any treatment except like pain relief kind of thing, like hospice, where she was just gonna from then on just slowly drift into incapability and death. And so they walk away from that interaction. The cousin just like he can't come up with any evidence to prove that Max did it, and he's upset and drives away. And the police is like, "Yep, that evidence makes me really think it was suicide because she didn't want to live the rest of her life because there was nothing to live for." So he's like, "You're good. I'll go write up the report. Let's bury this all, put it behind us, be free, essentially. Enjoy your life." And then Max kind of figures out that she ended her own life. She committed suicide through manipulation. So her final jab at him was to manipulate him into committing murder, essentially. As she wanted to die, saw an opportunity, and took pure delight in her last act being one of just bringing him down even further. So I'm sure she thought, and he'll kill me, and then he'll be hung for it. I'm taking you down with me kind of thing. You're giving me exactly what I want. Which is she's a terrifying lady. So they get in the car, and they're driving back to the house. And, well, before then, someone's like, yeah, I called back to the house to let them know what happened. And strangely, like, no one's seen Mrs. Danvers. Like, it looks like she's packed up her bags and has just left. And so no one has told Mrs. Danvers that Rebecca wasn't actually pregnant and actually had this terminal illness. Maybe. Maybe I interpreted that wrong. Maybe the cousin left early enough to tell Mrs. Danvers. They don't actually say. But the guy's just like, Mrs. Danvers is gone. No one knows where she's gone. Come home when you're ready. I will stave off the reporters. So they drive home, and suddenly Max is like, something's wrong. We gotta get home. Quick. Like, we gotta drive through the night and get home. So they do. And then she like takes a little nap in the car while he's driving. And then she wakes up. She's like, oh, the sun is rising. And he's like, it can't be rising. It's only like 2 a.m. There's all that light over there. It's like lighting up the sky. Right about where Manderley would be. And then the book ends. I'm just like, what? What happened? And I'm guessing that, because the book starts where she talks about how she can't ever go back to Manderley, and then they kind of get into her story, and we never really go back to that perspective. So you know that the house is gone, is inaccessible to them for some reason. So I guess the house burned down, maybe? And like, why? Did Mrs. Danvers do it? It's just like you killed my Rebecca, so I will now kill your beloved thing. Which is like, yeah, I accept that interpretation. Or is it just like this literary metaphor for you've done this horrible deed and gotten away with it, so you can't go back because everything has changed now. And so the metaphor is that your house has burned down because life's changed and you made this choice. I couldn't tell. I didn't know if it was you were supposed to interpret what happened or if it was left vague so that it was more of a metaphor. But it just ended. And I had a clear picture in my head that I had seen somewhere that the play ended with like the whole stage on fire and Mrs. Danvers just like has gone crazy. But that's all I remember. It's just this one image. And so it's like, surely, they go back to the house and find Mrs. Danvers and she's lost it. And we have a creepy moment similar to this perfectly preserved room. But nope, it just ended. We never see Mrs. Danvers. We never see what happened. We never see, I don't know. Maybe it was like a karma thing. You got away with murder, so karma came and took your house. I don't know. It was just I was very upset. So I started out reading the book, and then I switched to audiobook just because it was a little easier for what I was doing at the time. And so it's like in a book, you can see that the text runs out. And so you're kind of mentally prepared for it to end. But in an audiobook, you can't see it coming. And I was expecting to have the scene with the flames and the crazy Mrs. Danvers, so it just ended. Yeah, that's it. And I really struggled with the first half. Because I was like, this is just a bad idea. This is not a good person. You should waited like a year for him to get over his grief. But then when they dropped the I'm a murderer, like, oh, this changes everything. Everything is clicked into place, and the conflict is different, and the goals are different, and it's going real fast now. Lots of stress, lots of suspense. So I enjoyed the second half, and then hated the end. But I could see why it's such a popular book and how it's been loved as a musical in various places. Yeah. Like, I don't think I don't think I love the genre, this romance suspense. Although it wasn't as like romance as I thought it was gonna be. It definitely I feel like the first half was romance or romantic. And the second half was suspense. So I enjoyed the second half more. So I don't think I would ever read the book again. I'm glad I read it. It was enjoyable and it's about it. So yeah, my question, because later after the horrible ending, I went to the internet, as one does, and was like, what happened at the end? Like, what's your interpretation? And instead of finding interpretations, I found a lot of like people arguing whether they agreed with the protagonist. You're like, okay, this guy's a murderer and he's treated you really poorly and you're just going to stay with him. And there was just a lot of debate back and forth of a lot of people who read the book like hated the character start to end or liked her at the beginning and then hated her at the end. And there was a lot of argument as to why and why she's redeemable and why she's not. So my question is, do you feel like the main character was redeemable? Did you understand her choices? Did you agree with her choices? All those things. How did her character feel to you start to finish? Because it seems like it's a touchy subject for a lot of people. The next book is called Anxious People. I'm going to totally guess at the author's name because I don't have the book in front of me. Drick Backman? He's a Swedish author, and I'd heard of one of his other books and just came across this book and was like, oh, I'll give him a try. Sure, the Swedes have a certain kind of humor or writing style that would be interesting. So that one's coming up next. That's it for me. Back to my books. I'll be reading. Bye.